There is a path, old, quiet, and often unseen, that runs through the life of those who live with discipline and courage. It's not something you'll find packaged or advertised. It doesn't clamor for attention. It lives in the small space between thought and action, in the stillness before you choose, in the steady resolve of a person committed to living with intention. This is not an easy path. It will not hand you comfort, but it will give you something greater: transformation, a strength that does not depend on applause, a resilience forged in moments the world will never witness. This was the way of the Stoics, those who could stand calm in chaos, remain steady under insult, and turn hardship into fuel. Marcus Aurelius walked it under the weight of an empire. Epictetus walked it with chains at his feet. Seneca walked it among luxury, yet bound himself to principle. They were not gods, but human beings, facing the same inner battles you face, working each day to live with clarity, courage, and conviction. In the chapters ahead, we will explore 10 daily practices the Stoics lived by. If you follow them, not in imitation, but in sincerity, you will find yourself walking alongside Marcus in the palace, Epictetus in his modest room, and Seneca in the heart of Rome. Let these serve as both mirror and compass, showing you where you stand and where you are headed. The path of wisdom, the path the Stoics knew. Chapter 1, you choose to respond, not react. The first sign of this path lies in the most overlooked of places, the gap between what happens and how you answer it. In this small, fleeting space, your life quietly takes shape. In that pause lives your discipline, your freedom, your growth. The untrained mind misses it. It reacts instantly, lashes out, blames, drowns in impulse. It becomes a servant to emotion instead of a master over it. The Stoic, one who seeks wisdom, trains themselves to slow the wheel, to pause before the inner storm takes hold, to watch the first stirrings of anger without being pulled into its current, to choose response over reflex, clarity over chaos. That pause may be only a second long, but in that second, all of your power is born. The untrained may see it as hesitation. The wise know it as control, the birthplace of self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius captured it simply. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That strength does not come from shouting louder or moving faster. It comes from stillness. From that quiet space where you are no longer at the mercy of circumstance, where you shape your behavior instead of being shaped by impulse. You stop being carried by the wave. You decide the direction of the current. This is not weakness. This is the fiercest kind of power. The power to rule yourself when everything around you tries to rule you. When others seek to provoke you and you remain steady. When the world speeds up and you slow down. When old patterns try to pull you back and you answer from the wiser self you've been building. That is victory. Each pause, each resisted reaction, lays another stone in the foundation of a calm and unshakable life. You are teaching your mind and body. I do not belong to the storm. I belong to the stillness. This is the path of the Stoics. When you stop giving your peace to the anger of others, when your composure is guided not by noise, but by values, when silence becomes your shield and discernment your sword, when you can stand in the heat of insult or misunderstanding and remain quiet, not out of weakness, but because you no longer need to prove who you are. That is not passivity. It is precision. It is the crossing from reaction to responsibility, from being carried by events to seeing them clearly. The Stoic understands that reacting is easy. It costs nothing but a spark. It's the default of an untrained mind, a reflex requiring no thought, no discipline, no self-awareness. Anyone can do it. It's what the world expects: instant outrage, immediate retaliation, loud defense. But to respond, that is different. It asks for composure in the midst of chaos. It asks for the strength to feel an emotion without obeying it. It asks for the discipline to let a moment pass through you without losing yourself in it. Responding requires depth, the kind that cannot be faked. It demands the patience to observe your mind, the humility to question your first impulse, and the courage to delay action until it serves your principles. Every time you meet that challenge, it becomes a quiet victory. Every moment you do not break, you build. This is how the Stoic sharpens the edge of their character, not through comfort, but through resistance. The courage to remain unmoved by the emotion of the moment is the essence of their strength. The world will hand you endless invitations to lose your temper, to take offense, to lash out. The disciplined soul declines them, not from fear, but from wisdom, knowing that presence is more powerful than panic, that the right restraint can shift the course of a conflict, a relationship, even an entire life. This is not theory. It is the daily training of the soul, the slow work of becoming someone who does not need to be loud to be strong. And in that work, rooted, steady, and unseen, the real victory is won. Not in public debate, not in the noise of praise or blame, but in the silence of your own mind, where chaos ends, clarity begins, and the first breath of mastery is drawn. Pause the next time someone provokes you. 5 seconds, 5 breaths. Let each breath take you a step deeper into clarity. Feel the emotion rise, then let it fall, like a wave that breaks but does not sweep you away. Ask yourself, not only what is the wise response, but what does wisdom look like when it wears my face? What would the stronger, freer version of me do here? In this pressure? In this test? If you must, close your eyes. Feel your heartbeat steady. Let silence become your advantage. Let your breath carry you beyond the pull of impulse. Respond not as the old version of yourself would, but as the one you are becoming. If you do this once, it plants a seed. Do it often, and it grows into a root, deep, unseen, and strong. Over time, the pause is no longer something you force. It becomes who you are. Wisdom is no longer an effort. It is your nature. You won't just hold your power. You will be the source of it. Chapter 2. You seek to understand before you judge. Wisdom begins where assumption ends, and most assumptions are born from haste. The Stoic does not rush to conclusions because they know a quiet truth. The first thought is rarely the clearest. The loudest emotion is rarely the most accurate. Instead of accepting initial impressions, they test them. They slow the mind the way a master stills turbulent waters. They calm the emotional tide before it crashes into the shore of judgment. They look past what is obvious. They ask the questions most people are too reactive or too proud to ask. What else could this mean? What facts might be missing? What might I not be seeing? What is the whole picture, not just the convenient snapshot my mind has grabbed onto? This is not weakness. It is strength guided by patience. It is the mark of discipline, not naivete, not weakness, refinement. It is the deliberate choice to keep instinct from writing the story before truth has had time to speak. The Stoic understands that clarity requires effort, that truth takes patience, that wisdom is not given to those who act on impulse, but to those who slow down long enough to hear the whole message, not just the first sentence. Seneca once wrote, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality." In that single line, he revealed a universal human flaw. We do not suffer only from events themselves, but from the stories we quickly and unconsciously attach to them. We react to tone instead of message. We interpret silence as rejection. We clothe uncertainty in fear. And in doing so, we build prisons out of perception. The Stoic seeks freedom through clarity. They train their mind to step rather than leap, to investigate rather than assume. They recognize that the first thought is often a reflex, born of bias, fear, or ego, so they slow down and examine its source. Slowing our judgment is more than a social grace. It is a safeguard for the soul. It protects us from illusions disguised as truth. It opens space for unseen possibilities, for overlooked angles, for unheard voices. And in that space, awareness grows. Certainty softens. Rigidity gives way to curiosity. From this softer ground, insight begins to rise. Not shallow knowledge, but deep understanding, born of patient reflection. To seek understanding is to let go of the need to be right in favor of the desire to be wise. It reframes each moment, not as a chance to deliver judgment, but as an opportunity to receive instruction. A conversation stops being a debate and becomes a mirror. A conflict stops being a threat and becomes a window. To understand is to transform interactions into invitations for self-examination, becoming less reactive, more reflective, less concerned with offense, more committed to truth. You walk the path of wisdom when you choose curiosity over condemnation. When you slow your breath and quiet the voice of ego long enough to ask, what else is here? What is this showing me? What in my own perspective might be distorting the view? When you no longer need to be the one with the last word, but instead aim to be the one with the clearest sight. When you accept that the world is under no obligation to mirror your perspective, and that clarity often comes from seeing through your assumptions, not confirming them. You stop building towers of emotion on foundations of untested belief. You trade indignation for introspection. You begin to see what the Stoics called wisdom, the understanding that your view is not the world, only a window. And like any window, it gathers smudges. It must be cleaned. It needs light. This is the work of inner discipline, to see not just with the eyes, but with the conscience. To pause before judgment, not as hesitation, but as strength. To replace reflex with restraint, certainty with sincere and courageous questioning. It means making room for other truths, even when they challenge your own. That is where clarity begins. That is where wisdom lives, not in being right, but in being willing to see more deeply. The reactionary is bound to their first impression. The wise are freed by their second thought. So next time you feel wronged or offended, write down what happened. Then, write 3 other possible interpretations of the same event. Let your mind stretch beyond the first conclusion. Let that practice become a habit, and that habit become a quiet strength. Chapter 3. You value character over comfort. The Stoics believed the highest good was virtue. Not comfort, not pleasure, not approval. To the Stoics, virtue was not an abstract ideal, but the daily practice of living with reason, discipline, and integrity. They understood that comfort can become a trap, a gilded cage that leaves the soul dependent and untested. Pleasure can soften the will, dulling its edge. Approval can shift your compass outward, making your worth dependent on the crowd instead of your own conscience. But virtue sharpens, virtue strengthens. It is earned through difficulty and sustained through deliberate choice. To walk the Stoic path is to reject the notion that a good life must be an easy one. The Stoic knows that comfort often dulls the spirit, and that the soul, like the body, needs resistance to grow. True character is not forged in calm waters, but in storms. Not when the way is smooth, but when it is steep, uncertain, and painful. It is in choosing what is right over what is easy that the self takes shape. Epictetus wrote, "First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. And what you have to do will often require discomfort. It will mean facing fear rather than avoiding it. Speaking truth, even when your voice shakes. saying no when your body craves rest, and yes when your ego demands recognition. It will mean standing up again after failure has knocked you down. This is the essence of becoming. Identity is built in the repetition of hard, virtuous choices. You are walking the path when you no longer need ease to feel at peace. When you stop measuring your days by how comfortable they were and start asking, did I live in alignment with the person I want to be? When your aim shifts from how good did it feel to how true was it? When your standard is not success, but strength of spirit. When your compass is not popularity, but principle, you are walking the path. When you no longer need life to be easy for it to be good. When you stop tying your worth to comfort and instead measure growth not by how smooth the road feels, but by how you rise to meet its sharpest stones, you begin to see that every hard choice is a blade that carves away weakness, revealing the strength beneath. The soul, like the body, grows through resistance. It tears, it strains, it endures pressure, and in doing so, it expands in power and depth. Every time you choose courage over comfort, you spin an invisible thread of inner strength. Over time, these threads weave together into the unbreakable fabric of character. Each act of restraint is not withdrawal, it is transformation. It is a quiet message to the world and to yourself. I am not ruled by impulse. I am governed by principle. You begin to walk differently. You carry yourself not with arrogance, but with grounded authority, the kind that comes from choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. That is when every day of hardship walked with virtue becomes sacred, not because it was easy, but because it was real, because you faced it with integrity, because you showed up fully even when no one was watching. Each of these days becomes a stepping stone, another mark along the path of wisdom. You realize that discomfort is not a punishment, but a proving ground. And that wisdom is earned, one courageous step at a time. Each morning, ask yourself, what is the virtuous action today? And even if it is hard, do it. Let small acts of integrity compound, quietly building your strength. Chapter 4. You train yourself to be unoffended. There is a steady, unshakable power in the person who cannot be easily offended, not because they are indifferent, but because they have built an interior fortress, not of stone, but of self-respect and perspective. The Stoic is not thin-skinned. They are not brittle. They are not scanning the world for signs of disrespect or subtle slights. They do not make their peace fragile by tying it to the unpredictable winds of how others behave. Why? Because they understand that offense is often not something given, it is something taken. And much of the time, it is taken unnecessarily. To be unoffended is not to be numb, it is to be free. It is knowing you are under no obligation to react to everything around you. It is remembering that someone else's poor behavior does not require you to surrender your clarity, and that your dignity is not up for negotiation every time someone speaks with carelessness or ignorance. To be unoffended is to hold the rare strength to see clearly and remain calm when others are swept up in their own storms. It is to observe insult without becoming it. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly, choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. This is not merely a mindset, it is a discipline, a way of living that says, I know who I am, and you do not get to decide that. The wise are not easily insulted because they have stopped building their identity on the fragile foundation of other people's opinions. The easily offended become emotional puppets, their strings pulled by every perceived slight. But the Stoic is no puppet. They are the anchor in rough waters. They neither chase approval nor flinch at disapproval. They have built an inner insulation, A careless remark cannot start a war within them. To be offended by every word or look is to let your peace be held hostage by the noise of the world. And peace held hostage is not peace. It is dependency, wearing the mask of principle. You are walking the Stoic path when you can move through conflict without letting it sink into your spirit. When you can stand in the presence of disrespect and remain steady, not because it means nothing, but because you mean more. When your worth no longer rises and falls with someone else's ability to understand you. When you no longer need validation to feel grounded. When you stop chasing apologies to feel whole. Emotional self-control is not repression. It is refinement. It is the quiet reclaiming of authority over the one domain you truly own, your own mind. This is real power. Not loud, but immovable. Not reactive, but steady. Not fragile, but forged. The world will continue to provoke. People will misunderstand you, disregard you, talk over you, and talk about you. But the wise do not answer every provocation. They understand that attention is energy, and energy must be guarded. They choose to respond only when wisdom calls for it. And often, the wisest response is silence, not out of weakness, but from a depth of strength that needs no defense. The next time you feel disrespected, pause and ask, did this truly harm me? Or is it simply my ego reacting to a perceived slight? Stay with that question a moment longer than you normally would. Feel the tension rising. Notice the story your mind begins to write about justice, pride, and how others should behave. Then ask yourself, what am I really protecting here? My dignity or my ego's image of itself? In that narrow space between insult and interpretation lies your power. The disrespect may be real, but the suffering is often optional. What stings more? What was said, or what you decided it meant? The Stoic knows that most emotional bait is set not by others, but by the insecurities we carry, waiting to be triggered. Detachment is not denial. It is the clarity to watch your emotions rise and fall without handing them the wheel. It is letting the moment pass through you without leaving a stain. It is allowing words to fall without absorbing them. Choose to be larger than the offense. Redirect the energy of the moment toward clarity rather than conflict. Practice detachment not as escape, but as mastery. Let it become your quiet armor. Chapter 5. Obstacles as Teachers. To the untrained eye, obstacles are nuisances, delays, irritations, cruel detours meant to slow us down. But to the Stoic, they are not only unavoidable, they are essential. Every obstacle is a teacher in disguise. Challenges are not interruptions to the path, they are the path. Marcus Aurelius captured it well. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is more than a clever phrase. It is a blueprint for growth, a call to transformation. To the Stoic, adversity is not endured passively. It is an active curriculum. The harsh yet sacred classroom where resolve is tested, values are revealed, and character is not shaped by comfort, but by confrontation. Each hardship is an invitation, not to collapse, but to evolve, not to retreat, but to rise. The world presses against you, and instead of shrinking, you learn to stand taller. When something goes wrong, the Stoic does not ask, how do I avoid this? They ask, which part of me is still soft? Which part needs tempering so I can meet this with wisdom rather than weakness? They do not run from difficulty. They enter it with intention. They meet pain as a craftsman meets raw material, with a plan to shape it into something strong and purposeful. Difficulty is not an interruption. It is an initiation. It is not life's punishment. It is the price of progress. It does not hold you back. It pulls you forward. This is not motivational fluff. It is a radical way of seeing reality. It flips the story of victimhood on its head. The Stoics sees difficulty as necessary friction in the process of becoming who they were meant to be. They do not romanticize pain, but they do not flee from it. Pain is a message. Suffering is a forge. Struggle is a tool. Obstacles are not merely burdens to carry. They are bricks to build with. Through the lens of virtue, challenges are no longer curses. They are catalysts. They press against you so you may press deeper into your principles. You are walking the path when you stop asking, "Why me?" and begin asking, "What is this teaching me? What virtues are being called forth? What muscles of the soul are being exercised?" You stop measuring life by how smooth it feels and start measuring it by how solid you have become. You understand that no growth occurs without resistance, and no wisdom is forged without friction. Hardship is no longer a detour. It is a forge, a place of fire that burns away the false, the weak, the brittle, leaving only what is essential, what is unbreakable. You do not merely endure the trial. You engage with it. You extract its value. You study it like scripture, asking again and again, "What is this here to develop in me?" Then the fire becomes your ally. Then adversity transforms from punishment into preparation. That is when pain ceases to be the end of your path and becomes its sharpening. When you can face adversity not with fear, but with purpose. When the hard thing is met not with dread, but with discipline. Then you are walking the Stoic path, not because you seek suffering, but because you refuse to waste it. Not because it is easy, but because it is essential. Because every trial faced with wisdom adds a layer of armor to your mind, a line of clarity to your understanding, a new depth of resilience to your soul. Take one obstacle in your life right now. Do not minimize it, name it. Then write down what it might be training in you: patience, humility, resilience, courage, clarity. Ask yourself, if this obstacle were a teacher, what would it be showing me? Let that question become your lens. Let it guide your practice. Meet the moment. Engage with it. Transform its weight into strength. Chapter 6. You choose discipline over distraction. In a world built on interruption, thriving on urgency, discipline is a quiet rebellion. It is a sacred act of resistance against the pull of distraction, noise, and mental clutter. The Stoics understood this deeply. They lived in times of political unrest, temptation, and social chaos. And yet, they chose to turn inward. They sharpened the blade of their attention and directed it at the one target they could truly influence: themselves. For the Stoic, discipline is not punishment. It is alignment. It is the conscious decision to refuse the world the power to write your story. Seneca wrote, "No one guards their money as closely as they should guard their time. We are careful with property and wealth, yet too often waste the one thing most precious, life itself." Discipline is the act of taking your life back, moment by moment, focus by focus. To be disciplined is to know what matters and to act accordingly. It is to rise each day and remember your mission, not once, but continually, even when the work is dull, even when it is draining. It is to say no, with quiet conviction, to the trivial, the tempting, the loud, and the shallow. It is the deliberate refusal to be scattered. Discipline is the courage to sit in silence while the world chases noise. It is the strength to remain aligned when distraction promises relief. It is not rigidity, but rhythm, a rhythm grounded in purpose, not preference. To delay the easy thing in order to build the meaningful thing is to honor your future self. It is to understand that what is urgent is rarely what is important, and what is important will never shout as loudly as temptation. The Stoics understood this deeply. Without discipline, philosophy becomes poetry, pleasant to read, beautiful on paper, but useless in the trials of life. A life of intention must be built brick by brick, decision by decision, in the quiet moments where no one is watching. You are walking the path when you stop letting every impulse become action. When you notice the itch of distraction and choose presence instead. When cravings no longer command you and you consult your principles before your pleasures. You shut the door on distraction, not out of hatred, but because you recognize it for what it is, a thief in disguise. You value your potential more. You respect your purpose more. Discipline is not willpower alone. It is clarity. It is cutting through the fog of temptation with the blade of intention. It is knowing what matters most and guarding it fiercely, not when it is easy, but especially when it is inconvenient, unglamorous, and quiet. It is what you do in the shadows when no one is watching that reveals the true depth of your discipline. Discipline is creating a life of integrity where your actions echo your values so consistently that even your own internal resistance begins to yield. It is about building habits that reflect your deepest commitments, not fleeting goals, not shallow rewards, but principles that endure beyond mood and circumstance, especially when it is hardest. When you are tired, bored, or every excuse feels valid, discipline is what brings you back. When others waver, you return to your foundation. When your mind drifts, you gently guide it back, not with shame, but with steady persistence. Discipline is not brute force. It is elegant redirection. Practiced over time, it becomes second nature, an identity, a rhythm that shapes the way you move through the world. It becomes the gravity that keeps your life aligned, holding your priorities in place and preventing your focus from scattering. Identify one area of your life where distraction pulls at you. Notice the friction. Ask yourself, what would a disciplined version of me do right now? How would that version respond to this moment, this temptation, this choice? Do that once, then again, then again. Protect your energy like a fortress. Do not apologize for it. Let your boundaries speak your vision. Watch what you can build within. Clarity, strength, mastery, and peace. Chapter 7. You practice voluntary discomfort. Comfort, when constant, becomes a cage. It may feel soft and safe, but over time it dulls the edge of strength. The Stoics did not fear discomfort, they practiced it. They embraced it not for aesthetics or masochism, but because they understood a vital truth. If you can train yourself to go without what you desire, you can never be enslaved by it. True freedom is not found in indulging every craving, but in learning that you can live, and even thrive, without it. Seneca, for example, would spend days sleeping on the floor and eating coarse bread, not to dramatize austerity, but to ask himself a simple, powerful question. Do I need this to be content, or am I stronger than my comforts? Is this what I feared? That experience was not self-punishment. It was self-liberation. To walk through the very thing you fear and find that you are still standing, still breathing, still whole, is to reclaim power over it. If you can thrive in less, you become more. If you can endure cold, hunger, solitude, or fatigue, these things no longer hold you hostage. They lose their threat. You rise in stature. The practice of voluntary discomfort is not about glorifying suffering. It is about clarifying perspective. It is a reminder that comfort is not the same as happiness, and pleasure is not the same as peace. It is the proof that comfort is a preference, not a necessity. You train your body to endure more than it wants, and your mind to hold steady when ease is nowhere in sight. You harden yourself before life hardens you, because life will test you. If you have never practiced discomfort, even a small trial will feel like collapse. But if you choose discomfort on your own terms, strategically, with intention and discipline, you are already tempered. You inoculate yourself against fear. You become durable, adaptable, unconquerable. You are walking the Stoic path when you stop running from discomfort and begin to meet it. When you choose the cold shower, the early morning, the difficult conversation. When you willingly deny yourself ease, not to suffer, but to grow. When you can sit in hunger, silence, heat, or solitude without complaint. When comfort is no longer a condition for action. When you say, I will not wait for adversity to shape me. I will shape myself. I will become the fire before the world forces me into the flame. This week, choose one comfort to forego. Screens after a certain hour, sugar, fast food, chips, hot showers, even your usual chair. Do it not to punish yourself, but to train independence. Let your discomfort remind you, I am more than my cravings. Chapter 8. You anchor your life in principles, not moods. The modern world teaches you to follow your feelings, to act on impulse, to make mood your master. The Stoics taught the opposite. Follow your principles. Let reason, not emotion, guide your action. Moods fluctuate. Principles do not. If you act only when motivated, you become inconsistent at best, lost, and easily swayed at worst. But if you act according to your values, you become rare in this world, solid, grounded, untouchable. You become someone others turn to when the storm hits. Not because you are always happy, but because you are always anchored. Marcus Aurelius wrote, just do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter. Not how you feel about it, not who approves, not whether it's convenient. Just do the right thing. This is the heartbeat of Stoicism. The Stoic does not ask, what do I feel like doing today? They ask, what would virtue do today? What would the best version of me choose in this moment? They understand that feelings are visitors, sometimes wise, often deceiving. Values, however, are residents. A life built on values is a life with a foundation. To build a life on principles is to become your own lighthouse in the fog of emotion. It is to no longer be governed by mood swings, fleeting desires, or social pressures. You stop outsourcing your decisions to the shifting sands of emotion. You no longer drift like a leaf in the wind. You become a rooted tree, present, aligned, unwavering. You have something stronger than impulse. You have a North Star, a direction, a code. You know who you are and what you stand for. Even when emotions scream otherwise, even when the world offers 1,000 reasons to quit, break, or conform, you are walking the path. When your actions are guided not by fleeting motivation, but by enduring meaning, you are anchored. When your actions are grounded not in fleeting excitement, but in lasting purpose. When you stop waiting to feel good before doing good, and instead act because it is right. When your identity is no longer built on how you feel, but on what you uphold, what you are willing to live, and perhaps even suffer for. You begin to notice that real confidence does not come from riding the high of motivation, but from showing up when it is faded. When there is no applause, no reward, only the quiet conviction that you are living in alignment. When discipline continues after inspiration fades, sustained not by adrenaline, but by integrity. You show up on days you'd rather disappear. You honor your commitments even when no one else sees. You hold to your standard, not because it feels good, but because it is right, because it belongs to you. To live by principle is not to be perfect. It is to be consistent. It is to fail forward, to fall, recalibrate, and return. It is to maintain structure amid chaos, to hold inner order even as the world unravels, to live with calm in the fire, not out of detachment, but because you are rooted. It is not glamorous. It is rarely praised, often invisible, yet unshakable. It is not noise. It is signal. The Stoic does not seek approval. They do not act for show. They act because alignment with principle is the measure of life. A life without principle drifts like a leaf without anchor. The cost of compromising your code is always greater than the cost of discomfort, delay, or discipline. When you choose your code over convenience, your values over vanity, your integrity over insecurity, you walk the same path Marcus Aurelius once walked. Not above the world, but above its illusions, not detached from life, but deeply connected to its truest rhythm. Choose one guiding principle: honesty, courage, kindness, self-discipline. Write it not just in your notes, but on your heart. Let it be more than a concept. Let it be a contract, a vow, a daily intention. Then observe yourself closely, as if studying your own character in real time. Notice how many of your actions today align with that principle, not in grand gestures, but in the smallest choices. How you respond to irritation, how you speak to strangers, how you handle temptation, how you show up when it is uncomfortable. These small acts reveal the measure of your character. Each night, review them. Ask, did I live by this today? Not to judge, but to clarify. Not to condemn, but to realign. Be honest. Were there moments you abandoned it for ease? Were there moments you upheld it despite resistance? Let your evening reflection become a sharpening stone, not for guilt, but for growth. Live by your principle, not only when it feels natural, but especially when it feels inconvenient. When you are tired, under pressure, or tempted by the shortcut. That is when it matters most. That is when virtue begins to shape you. Let your principle become your compass, not just in calm waters, but in storms. When the path forks, when emotions flare, when fear clouds your sight, let it guide you. And if you fail, and you will, that is not a reason to stop. It is a reason to return, recommit, re-engage, reflect. The Stoics knew failure was inevitable, but they refused to let it become final. They did not aim for perfection. They aimed for persistence. They understood that stumbling is part of the journey, but quitting is not. Each fall signals not weakness, but the next layer of strength to be built. Let each day be a new opportunity to embody what you believe. Let every failure become fertilizer. Let every shortfall refine your commitment. Growth is not linear. Transformation is not instantaneous. It is gradual, forged in repetition, tested in fatigue. Abandoning your principle after one failure is proof you never fully believed in it. But if you return to it again and again, it becomes more than behavior. It becomes a way of being. Over time, that single principle practiced daily becomes the backbone of your integrity. It becomes your moral architecture, the invisible framework shaping every decision, every boundary, every expression of who you are. It becomes the origin of your clarity, the reason you can think straight when others are lost in noise, the reason you remain steady when the winds shift. The seed of your strength, planted in discipline, watered in humility, and nurtured through repetition, grows into a character that nothing can take from you. Chapter 9. You master the inner dialogue. The battle that matters most is the one no one else sees, the one that unfolds in your mind. The Stoics understood this long before neuroscience or therapy apps. They knew that the way we speak to ourselves shapes everything. Thoughts may be invisible, but their consequences are not. They can chain us or free us, cloud our judgment or clarify it, paralyze us or propel us toward growth. Epictetus wrote, "It's not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of them. Between what happens and what it means lies the voice of our own judgment. If that voice is undisciplined, irrational, or self-defeating, peace and purpose are impossible." So the Stoics train the voice. They examine the thought. They question the narrative. Their minds are not loud, but they are vigilant, deliberate, awake. Mastering your inner dialogue means refusing to let your mind become a breeding ground for negativity, resentment, or helplessness. It means observing your thoughts without being ruled by them. It means knowing the difference between a thought and a truth, between an emotion and a command. You can feel fear and still act. You can notice doubt and still choose courage. The Stoic does not silence the mind. They sharpen it. You are walking the path when you take responsibility for your inner voice. When you stop letting thoughts run wild and begin to question the lens through which you perceive the world, you catch yourself in spirals of self-pity or rage and choose to pause. Not through suppression, which buries the fire deeper, but through redirection, which transforms it. You step back. You breathe. You ask, is this thought useful? Is it true? Is it helping me become who I wish to be? This is not denial. It is discernment. It is the quiet power of a mind trained to serve you, not enslave you. You begin to recognize the difference between what merely passes through your mind and what deserves to remain there. When you replace panic with pause, you give yourself space to lead, not be led. You reclaim authority over your inner realm. You no longer allow emotions to storm in and seize control. Instead, you slow the moment. You remind yourself, I am the thinker of these thoughts, not their slave. You begin choosing your inner language with intention. You speak to yourself not with indulgence that excuses weakness, nor with harshness that corrodes your spirit, but with discipline, with the steady voice of a mentor, and with dignity, as if your soul is sacred, worthy of protection and cultivation. The Stoic knows that mastery of the mind is mastery of life. The outer battle is always a reflection of the inner one. A mind once mastered becomes not only your defense, but your greatest weapon, your deepest well of strength, and your clearest source of peace. Take one recurring thought, especially a negative or anxious one, and write it down. Then rewrite it from the perspective of your highest self, not from fear, but from wisdom. Read it morning and evening. Let it become the voice that echoes steadily within. Chapter 10. You live for impact, not image. In a world obsessed with perception, the Stoic is obsessed with substance. Modern life demands attention, validation, and visibility. The Stoic seeks truth. They care not for how things appear, but for how things truly are. They do not ask, do they see me succeeding? They ask, am I becoming someone worth being? This distinction is everything. The former traps you in performance and pretense. The latter roots you in purpose and principle. Seneca warned, what is the point of having countless books and libraries whose titles the owner could scarcely read through in a lifetime? The number only confuses a learner instead of instructing him. The Stoic applies the same wisdom to reputation. What value is admiration if your interior is empty? What use is fame if your character is hollow? To be widely known but shallowly understood or celebrated outwardly while suffering inwardly is a hollow reward. The Stoic does not chase applause. They pursue alignment. They do not seek to impress. They seek to become, anchored, disciplined, forged, not to be admired or followed. When you live for impact, the need to be seen fades. Not, how does this look? But what does this contribute? Not, will this go viral? But will this endure? You ask, how can I serve? What ripples will my actions leave long after I am gone? The Stoic does not broadcast principles, they embody them. Virtue is not a slogan, but a second skin. They are known by consistency, discipline, and substance, not marketing. Reputation is a shadow, not the goal. You walk the Stoic path when success is measured not by metrics, but by meaning. When victories are internal, silent, anchored in integrity, and your compass points steadily toward contribution rather than recognition. When your first instinct is no longer to be seen, but to be sincere, your questions shift. Not, did they notice me? But did I move something forward today? Did I make someone stronger, wiser, or more grounded just by being present? This is where the Stoic lives, not in the limelight, but in the quiet corners of impact. You release the need to be liked and replace it with the commitment to be useful. You shift your focus from applause to alignment, from pleasing others to honoring your own conscience. The reward is no longer visibility, It is virtue. Validation is no longer external, for you have found it in principle. You no longer chase relevance. You pursue meaning. You begin to live as though your life were private, unseen, untouched by praise or recognition. Even then, it would be deeply worthwhile because you know you are aligned. Life becomes less about showcasing and more about shaping yourself into someone strong, just, dependable. Shaping the world around you through quiet effort and unseen service. You start to feel the weight and richness of invisible contribution. Legacy takes precedence over attention. Intention guides you more than reaction. You ask not how does this look, but what does this produce? You understand that lasting influence often grows where no one observes, and you are at peace with that, because you have chosen depth over display. You seek authenticity, not applause. You are no longer a brand. You are a force. You enter rooms not to dominate, but to uplift. You move through life not polishing an image, but sharpening your soul. You do not need to shine. You need to stand. You do not need to be seen. You need to matter. And when that becomes your practice, you have not merely studied Stoicism, you have lived it. Take a moment to examine one area of your life where image has eclipsed impact. Social media, career decisions, even casual conversation. Are you acting for how it appears rather than what it achieves? Are you choosing visibility over value? Sit with that question. Ask yourself, if no one ever saw this, would I still do it? Would I still say it, wear it, post it, pursue it? If there were no likes, no applause, no recognition waiting at the end, what remains? Let that reflection strip away performance and reveal what is genuine. Then go deeper. What would I do more of if I were unconcerned with how it looks? What would I let go of if admiration were irrelevant? Let these questions refine your priorities, guiding you toward alignment. The goal is not to disappear, but to become undeniable in your truth. To do less for show, more for substance. Let this clarity lead you, not just to what matters, but into a life that holds meaning, even if no one is watching.